Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to do something a little bit different.
Okay.
We're going to do kind of like a master class or a workshop
Okay, cool.
on this idea of thinking faster and talking smarter
Yeah, like that.
in the moment.
Yeah.
And we've all been in those situations
Absolutely.
where, we're put on the spot. We have to give a quick introduction or answer a question we weren't expecting. Or even just navigate those sometimes awkward
You're right.
small talk situations.
Yeah,
And I think, for a lot of us, we feel that little tightening in our chest
that's for sure.
when we know we might be put in that situation.
I think that happens to most people, yeah.
Yeah. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of do a deep dive into a methodology to help all of us feel more comfortable and confident in those situations.
This is going to be good.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm excited. So the framework for this is something that was developed at Stanford University
Wow.
for MBA students.
I'm assuming they're pretty smart.
Yeah, so you would think that, they would have it all figured out.
Right.
But
But
apparently,
they're not.
even these incredibly sharp individuals
Okay.
felt the pressure when, a professor would cold call on them with a challenging question.
That's interesting.
And it just goes to show, that this is something that a lot of people grapple with.
Yeah.
And this is not just about, answering questions in a classroom setting,
Right.
but it's really about any of those moments where you have to, think quickly and communicate clearly.
So what are we talking about here?
So we're talking about giving feedback,
Right?
acing job interviews,
Oh, I need help with that.
confidently stating your perspective in a meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
Really kind of any of those moments where, clear, quick thinking
Yeah.
and smart communication are absolutely essential.
I like this already.
Yeah. So before we kind of get into the details of the methodology, I just want to do a really quick exercise with you, just to kind of highlight a key aspect of communication.
Okay, I'm game.
All right, so just picture this sentence in your mind, okay?
Okay.
Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years.
Whoa. Slow down.
Okay, sorry. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Now, what I want you to do is just count how many times the letter F appears in that sentence.
Okay, give me a second.
Yeah, keep your count to yourself for now. Okay, you got it.
I think so.
All right, so how many did you come up with?
I got 3.
Okay, 3.
Yeah.
A lot of people get 3.
Okay.
Some people get 4 or 5.
All right.
But there are actually 6 Fs in that sentence.
What?
Yeah, and here's the other little twist to it.
Okay.
A lot of people also miss a very common 2-letter word
Ah.
that ends in F.
Is it of?
It is of, yeah.
Oh, man.
Of appears twice in that sentence.
Okay, so there's 6 F's and 2 of it.
Exactly.
Wow, I totally missed that.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience, the first time I encountered this, I only found 3.
It's really tricky.
It is really tricky. And what's so fascinating about this is that it shows how easily we overlook details, even when we're actively looking for them.
Yeah, you'd think you'd catch it.
You would think so, right?
Especially something like an F, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is a good analogy for communication in general,
How so?
because sometimes we miss those little things that can make a big difference in how our message is received.
Right, like tone of voice,
Tone of voice, exactly.
body language,
Body language, yeah, all of that stuff.
little things, you know?
So today we're going to try to uncover some of those little things that can make a big difference in your spontaneous speaking. And to do that, we're going to be walking through a 6-step methodology.
6 steps. Okay.
Yeah. And this methodology is neatly divided into 2 key areas.
Okay.
Mindset, which is, how to prepare yourself mentally.
Yeah.
And messaging, which is, the strategies that you can use to actually structure and deliver your thoughts effectively.
So like the content of what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with mindset.
Okay.
And the first step is taming the anxiety beast.
Oh, the beast.
Yeah. So, be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt a little flutter of nerves
Oh, yeah.
when you knew you might be put on the spot?
Definitely.
Yeah. And research suggests that upwards of 85% of people feel nervous in high-stakes speaking situations.
Wow, that many.
Yeah. So it's incredibly common.
I guess I'm not alone then.
No, you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
And think about it from the other side for a moment.
Okay.
When you're listening to somebody who's clearly nervous,
Right.
how does that make you feel?
Well, I usually feel bad for them. Like,
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable myself.
Exactly.
It's almost like secondhand anxiety or something.
Yeah, it is. It's called that sometimes. Yeah. And so it's really important for you to consider, managing your anxiety isn't just about your own comfort.
Right.
It's about making sure that your audience can actually focus on your message
That makes sense.
and not be distracted
Right.
by
Yeah.
your nervousness.
It's distracting.
Yeah. So, when it comes to anxiety, we kind of have to tackle it on two fronts.
Okay.
The symptoms, those physical things that happen,
Right.
and the sources.
Yeah.
What's actually triggering the anxiety in the first place.
So the symptoms and the sources.
Exactly. So let's start with symptoms.
Okay.
What are some of the physical sensations
Mm.
that people often experience when they get nervous?
Well, I mean, you blush, you start to perspire.
Yeah, you get the classic plumbing reversal.
The numbing reversal.
Yeah, sweaty palms.
Right, right.
But a mouth suddenly as dry as the Sahara Desert.
I hate when that happens.
It's so bizarre.
It is.
But it's common.
Mm.
You might freeze up, your mind goes blank.
Yeah.
You might, experience a rapid heartbeat,
Mm-hmm.
shakiness,
Sure.
all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's just your body freaking out.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, your system is perceiving this potential threat,
Right.
and it triggers that fight or flight response.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so while these reactions are totally normal,
Yeah.
there are definitely things that you can do to manage them.
Like what?
Well, one of the most effective techniques is deep belly breathing.
Deep belly breathing.
Yeah.
Like yoga.
Yeah, it's very much like a yoga breath.
Okay.
You take a slow, deep inhale
Mm-hmm.
that fills your abdomen.
Okay.
But here's the key.
Okay.
The exhale is actually more important
The exhale.
than the inhale.
Mhm.
So you want to aim for an exhale that's twice as long as your inhale.
Oh, wow.
And even just 2 or 3 of those breaths can really help to slow your heart rate and kind of calm your nervous system.
Okay.
So it's a great tool to use, before walking into a potentially high pressure situation.
Yep.
Or, before unmuting yourself on a call.
I like that.
Yeah. And then for dry mouth,
Oh, yeah.
sipping warm water can help.
Mm-hmm.
Sucking on a lozenge or even
Yep.
chewing gum beforehand can help to stimulate those salivary glands.
Yeah, anything to get some moisture in there.
Exactly. And then for blushing or perspiring,
Oh, yeah.
holding something cold in the palms of your hands can be surprisingly effective.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
How does that work?
So the palms of your hands, along with your forehead
Yeah.
and the back of your neck,
Okay.
are these key thermoregulators for your body.
Ah.
And so when you're stressed, your heart rate increases, your blood vessels constrict,
Okay.
and your body temperature can actually rise,
Oh, wow.
leading to blushing and sweating. And so holding something cold helps to kind of counteract that by cooling you down internally.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, definitely. So we've talked about managing the symptoms,
Right.
but what about the root causes
The source.
of anxiety, these situations?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's the worry about the outcome,
Yeah, the desired outcome.
the goal. You know,
Yeah.
like they're worried about a presentation going poorly,
Yeah.
or not getting the job after a job interview,
Yeah.
or just saying the wrong thing in a conversation.
Yeah.
And it all boils down to this fear of a potential negative outcome.
Yeah, like not achieving the goal that you have in mind.
Exactly.
So how can you break that cycle of future-oriented worry?
Well, I think the key is to become very present-oriented.
Present-oriented.
Yeah. Because when you're truly in the moment,
Yeah.
you're not dwelling on these potential future failures.
Makes sense.
And there are actually a lot of different techniques
Okay.
that you can use to help you anchor yourself in the present. So, like doing something physical,
Like what?
like taking a walk
Oh, okay.
before a nerve-wracking event,
Yeah.
listening to music.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, a lot of athletes do that.
Yeah, to get in the zone.
Right, even just engaging in conversation with others
Well-
before you have to speak.
Right, because you can't really be
Yeah.
worrying about what might go wrong in a presentation
Mm-hmm.
if you're actively listening and responding to somebody else.
That's true. There are also some mental exercises
Right.
that you can do, like counting backwards.
Yeah, you mentioned counting back from 100 by 17s.
By 17s, yeah, that definitely requires some focus.
It does. And then there's your personal favorite,
Oh, yeah?
which is tongue twisters.
Tongue twisters! I mean, come on, you can't really be thinking about anything else when you're trying to say,
Yeah.
I slit a sheet. I slid upon a slitted sheet. I sit correctly.
That's a good one.
It
That's
is.
your go-to, right?
It is, yeah. And it's not just about, the silliness of it.
Right.
It's actually a great way to warm up your voice
Yes.
and bring your focus to the present moment.
It's like athletes warming up before a game. You warm up your voice and your mind with a tongue twister. So we've tackled anxiety.
You've slain the beast.
We have slain the beast, yes.
Yeah.
Now, what's the second step in this mindset category?
Okay. Step number 2 is maximizing mediocrity.
Maximize mediocrity.
Yeah,
That sounds a little counterintuitive,
it does, right?
especially if you're someone who strives for excellence.
Yes, and that's kind of the point.
Okay.
The reason I say this to my students on their very first day
Mm.
is that we are often our own biggest obstacles when it comes to spontaneous speaking.
Yeah.
We get in our own way by constantly judging and evaluating our thoughts
As we're speaking.
as we're speaking. It's like trying to juggle, but simultaneously critiquing your juggling technique.
Right, you just end up dropping everything.
Didn't drop everything, yeah. Think of your brain as a computer.
Okay.
You know when you have too many applications running in the background?
Yeah.
The performance of each one suffers because the cognitive bandwidth is stretched thin. And the same thing happens when you're constantly evaluating
Yeah.
and judging every word that comes out of your mouth.
Right, you have less mental capacity to focus on what you're actually saying.
Exactly. So it's not about never evaluating your speaking.
Okay.
It's about turning down the volume on that internal critic in the moment.
Right, and just letting the words flow.
Exactly. The goal isn't to be perpetually mediocre.
Right.
The goal is to give yourself permission to simply answer the question,
Yeah.
give the feedback,
Yeah.
engage in the small talk
Right.
without the added pressure of perfection.
So maximize mediocrity so
Yeah.
you can achieve greatness.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've managed anxiety, you've turned down the internal critic.
Mhm.
What's the third mindset step?
The third step is about reframing how you view spontaneous speaking.
Okay.
It's about seeing it as an opportunity rather than a threat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And this is a big one
Yeah.
because a lot of us instinctively feel challenged or even attacked when we're put on the spot.
Yeah.
If you announce at the end of a meeting that there's going to be Q&A,
Yeah,
a lot of people brace themselves.
Yeah.
They're worried about being challenged or exposed.
exactly. And when you perceive a situation as threatening,
Right.
it affects not only what you say, but how you say it.
Yes.
You might become defensive.
Yeah.
Your answers might be curt.
Yeah, flustered.
You get flustered. Yeah, your tone could be harsh.
Right.
So, there's a different way to
Uh-huh.
approach this.
Okay, I'm listening.
And to illustrate this, I want to talk about a simple improvisation game called Give a Gift.
Give a gift. I
Yeah.
like it already.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Okay.
So imagine you have an empty box.
Okay,
Right.
I've got it.
On the count of 3, simply extend your arms as if you're giving that imaginary box to someone.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
All right, and then when you receive a gift, you just do the reverse.
Got it.
Okay. So the game involves 2 partners. One person gives the imaginary box to the other.
Oh.
The receiver opens, it looks inside, looks at the giver and says, "Thank you for the giver."
Okay.
And then they name the first thing that pops into their head.
Anything.
It could be anything, even something that wouldn't physically fit in the box.
Okay.
The giver then immediately explains why they gave that particular gift.
Yeah.
And then you switch roles.
Oh, I like this.
It's fun, right?
Yeah.
And there's a key principle of improvisation
Okay.
that emerges from this activity.
What is it?
So most people, when they receive a gift, they instinctively embrace what's called the yes and principle.
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of saying like a dog bone, I didn't give you a dog bone,
Right.
they go along with it.
Yeah.
And they say like, of course I did, and here's why.
Right.
So they accept the premise and they build upon it.
I see.
And that's kind of the core of improv, is this idea of yes and.
Mm-hmm.
And so how does this connect to real life communication?
Well, the idea is to approach questions and feedback in the same way as opportunities for connection and learning.
Okay.
So even if someone is asking you a challenging question,
Right.
if you can see it as a chance to connect,
Mhm.
to share your perspective, or to learn something new,
Yeah.
it can fundamentally change your approach
Right. And your response.
and your response. Yeah.
So you mentioned 4 specific tools
Okay.
for seeing things as opportunities. Can you elaborate on those?
Sure. So the first is adopting a growth mindset.
Growth mindset,
Oh,
which is a concept that was championed by Carol Dweck.
yes. And essentially, it's the belief that your abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication and hard work.
Yeah.
And a key aspect of this is the phrase, not yet.
Not yet. So if something doesn't go the way you hoped
Right.
in a communication situation, instead of seeing it as a failure,
Yeah.
you see it as something that you haven't mastered yet.
Exactly. Which opens the door to learning and growth.
I like that. It kind of takes the sting out of those setbacks.
It does. Okay, so the second tool is yes and, which we already touched on with the improvisation game.
Right.
And it's about finding common ground even in disagreement. So
Right.
in a spontaneous conversation or a negotiation,
Right.
looking for areas where you can say yes and, acknowledging the other person's point and then
Yeah.
building upon it fosters connection and collaboration.
I see. And the third tool comes from the world of basketball.
It does. This one's called Next Play.
Next play.
And this comes from the legendary basketball coach, Mike Krzyzewski.
Coach Guy.
Coach K, yeah. And the idea is that if you make a mistake,
Like missing a shot.
like missing a shot,
Yeah.
you don't dwell on it.
Yeah.
You immediately move on to the next play.
Right.
And so in communication, if something doesn't go as planned,
Okay.
you acknowledge it internally,
Yeah.
but then you shift your focus
The present moment.
to the present moment. Yeah,
And you keep the conversation flowing.
exactly.
So next play.
Next play.
But later on, you can reflect on what worked and what didn't. Okay. And then the final tool.
Okay, the final tool is reframing mistakes
Okay.
as mistakes.
Mistakes. I like that.
Yeah, so think about film and television production.
Okay.
Actors do multiple takes
Right.
of the same scene.
Yeah.
No single take is necessarily wrong.
Right.
They're just exploring different approaches to optimize the performance.
Yeah.
And so similarly, when you say something that doesn't land the way you intended,
Right.
view it as a mistake. It wasn't a failure.
Yeah.
It was just one attempt.
Right.
And you can try again with a different approach.
Yeah. So it encourages experimentation
Exactly.
and learning without beating yourself up about it.
Without the negative connotations of mistake.
I love that. Okay. So we've managed anxiety. We've maximized mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned to see opportunities. What's the fourth mindset step?
Okay, the fourth step is crucial
Okay.
for effective communication,
Right.
especially in spontaneous situations.
I'm intrigued.
It's listening well.
And this is a skill that I think a lot of us could stand to improve,
Yeah.
myself included. Often we listen just enough to grasp the general idea of what someone is saying,
Yeah.
and then we immediately start formulating our own response.
Oh, yeah.
We're not truly listening deeply.
Yeah, you're already thinking about what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
Right. And that can lead to errors.
It can, yeah.
Imagine a scenario
Okay.
where someone comes out of a meeting looking downcast
Okay.
and speaking quietly,
Right.
and you might jump in with feedback on their performance
Yeah.
when what they really needed was support.
Oh, yeah.
And so by not listening deeply to their nonverbal cues
Mm-hmm.
and the overall context,
Right.
you can end up doing a disservice.
Yeah, you can make things worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can we cultivate better listening skills, especially in the moment,
Okay. Well, firstly, listen intently.
intently?
Yeah, as one professor put it, listen until you sweat.
Listen until you sweat.
Listening is active work. I like that.
Focus on the bottom line. The
Yeah.
core message the speaker is trying to convey.
Right.
Secondly, employ the pace, space, grace methodology.
Pace, face grace.
Yeah, I learned this from my colleague, Collins Dobbs. Pace means slowing things down,
Okay.
both externally and internally, to allow yourself to truly hear what's
Yeah.
being said. Space refers to creating both physical and mental space
Right.
to focus on the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And grace involves paying attention to the nuances of their delivery,
Okay.
the environment,
Yeah.
and also trusting your own intuition.
Yeah.
Your past experiences and observations can provide valuable context.
Pace, space
They
grace.
say it's grace. It's a good one. And then one of the most effective tools for better listening
Okay.
is asking clarifying questions
Yeah.
and paraphrasing.
Yeah.
So there's often a pressure to respond immediately,
Right.
but pausing to ask for clarification
Right.
or to summarize what you've heard not only ensures understanding,
Right.
but it also buys you valuable time to formulate a thoughtful response.
I see. So paraphrasing can be really powerful
It can.
because it shows the speaker
Yeah.
you're engaged
Right.
and actively processing their message.
Exactly. And it's not just about parroting back what was said.
Right.
It's about synthesizing the key ideas
Yeah.
and presenting them back in a distilled way.
Okay.
And importantly, paraphrasing should always lead to something else.
Okay.
A follow-up question,
Right.
a connection to the topic at hand,
Yeah.
or a continuation of the conversation.
So it keeps the dialogue moving.
It keeps the dialogue moving, yeah. You remember that exercise that we did?
Oh, yeah, with the name story?
The name story, yeah. So we had people pair up
Right.
and share a brief story about their name.
Could be anything related to it.
Anything at all. The listener then had to paraphrase the story
Right.
and immediately ask a question.
And the speaker didn't necessarily have to answer it.
Didn't have to answer it, no. The goal was to make it a natural part.
Of the conversation flow.
I remember your example about being teased as a kid
Oh, yeah.
for your name, Matt,
Matt the Gnat.
and how that influenced the names that you chose for your children.
It did, yes.
And then the follow-up question was, what are the kids' names?
That's right. And, ultimately, active, intentional listening
Yeah.
is critical for navigating spontaneous communication effectively.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 key mindset steps.
We have.
Now let's shift gears
All right, let's do it.
and move on to the messaging component of
Like
this
that.
methodology. So step number 5 is all about structure.
Structure. Okay. Structure is the backbone of clear and
Yeah.
effective communication,
Especially when you're thinking on the fly.
especially when you're thinking on the fly. When you're put on the spot,
Yeah.
it's easy to just ramble
Right.
or list information
Without any clear organization.
without any clear organization.
Yeah. But our brains are wired for structure,
They are.
for stories.
Yes.
With a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that includes yours. And that includes mine. I mean, think about it. It's like being a tour guide.
You were a tour guide, right?
I was, yeah,
So-
at Stanford, yeah, back in the day. And the most important thing they taught us was never lose your tour group.
Right.
And the way you keep people engaged and
Yeah.
following you,
Both physically and mentally.
physically and mentally, is by providing structure.
Right.
It helps orient people
Yeah.
and sets expectations.
If you just started walking and talking,
Exactly.
people would be like, where are we going?
They'd be lost. And the same is true in spontaneous speaking.
And it's not just about having a structure,
Right.
but it's also about using effective transitions.
Yes, to
Connect your ideas smoothly, and not just relying on those ordinal words, like first, second, third.
Right, first, second, third, yeah.
You gave an example of the problem, solution, benefit structure
Problem, solution, benefit.
as a common persuasive framework,
It is a good one.
and then you shared your personal
Yeah,
favorite.
I did. So my go-to structure is very simple,
Right.
but incredibly versatile.